When we approach art, we often look for a very elusive concept: beauty. As hard as it is to define, beauty can be quickly described as a quality given by the harmonious interaction of aesthetically pleasing features. Here are some examples of what we would nowadays consider a beautiful work of art. Do keep in mind that beauty is always subjective and highly dependent on both context and culture. However, contemporary art has now left beauty behind, so to speak. It now focuses on different concepts like human interaction, human society, the value of technology. Beauty is no longer the core concept, but just another concept in a sea of different options. However, the disenchantment we feel when faced with this more adventurous art maybe comes from the fact that we're trying to force a perspective that isn't there to begin with. Sure enough, you can look at this painting all you want looking for kittens and cuddles, but you're not gonna find them because it wasn't the intention of the artist to put them there in the first place. It's the same with beauty. You'll probably be disappointed when looking at a piece of art and wondering that why is this not beautiful? But that's not necessarily a problem with the artwork. Maybe it's a problem with your approach to the artwork. Trying to dive deeper into this concept of ugly art, I'm going to look at 6 different works of art. Each of these is ugly in their own special way, but that doesn't mean they're not art. First, we'll take a look at American action painting, particularly the work of Willem de Kooning, Woman No. 1, and Jackson Pollock's No. 131. The chaotic mess presented on both canvases is hardly harmonious or balanced. But the point here is that American action painting was not trying to be beautiful. It was instead focused on portraying a sense of energy and action, not on portraying beauty. Would this still be considered art? Well, according to art critic Susan Sontag on her essay Against Interpretation, they are. She holds that a work of art should not be judged by its content, but rather by its aesthetic experience. This doesn't mean that the work of art has to be beautiful. An aesthetic experience is experiencing something directly through our senses. This means feeling grossed out or scared by a given painting is still an intense aesthetic experience, though not strictly related to beauty as we know it. Kooning and Pollock's work certainly convey us with a sense of dynamism and movement. This is the aesthetic experience intended by American action painters. It's not related to the concept of being beautiful, but rather the feeling of being pushed around and moved all over the place. Feeling the process of the painting rather than just experiencing the final result. However, as I said before, there's many different kinds of non-beautiful paintings. Another very distinct example is maybe found in the works of Stanislaw Bekinski and Francis Bacon. These works can best be described as disturbing. The eerie choice of colors, hellish landscapes, and terrifying mysterious figures go very much against our conception of beauty. They are really not pretty by any means. Does this mean they are necessarily not art? Not at all. Actually, art historian Lucy Lippard developed a technique in which she conducted a threefold analysis of many somewhat polemic works of art. This analysis is based around 3 key concepts: the form and materials of the artwork, the content or the idea behind the artwork, and the context on which it was made. Bekinski's work, Untitled, is indeed quite unsettling, but when we look at it through Lippard's defense, we realize that it's actually a pretty great artwork. If we look at the form and materials of the painting, we will realize that Bekinski was a master of oil painting. His use of color is great, and his compositions are balanced. If we look at the content of the painting, we will soon learn that Bekinski often painted these hellish landscapes as a window into the nature of dreams and even nightmares, which corresponds with the eerie tone and unsettling vistas presented on most of his works. Finally, if we look at the context, we'll realize that he painted most of his works during the second half of the 20th century, a period that was remarkable for the fear of nuclear annihilation and the possible end of civilization, which suddenly makes his devastated and terrifying landscapes a lot more real and gives them additional meaning. Our final stop is particularly in regards to violence inside art. Violence is definitely not a pretty thing. So, is violent art still art? Here's a couple of examples. Fernando Botero's series on the tortures of Abu Ghraib tell the tale of abuse and torture experienced by the prisoners of the Abu Ghraib jail in Iraq. While Chris Burden, on his performance Shot, actually gets shot in the arm. Are these extreme examples of violence justifiable within the arts? Art critic Arthur Danto developed a series of key characteristics that would justify any given cultural product as art. He did something similar to Lippert, in the sense that he focused on three different areas. In this case, aboutness, embodiment, and an artistic intention. In Danto's eyes, a work of art should always have a meaning, an aboutness, something that it's trying to talk about, while the work of art itself should adequately embody this meaning. This means that when looking at the work of art, we would instantly reference what it's trying to tell us. He also considered artistic intention a very important part, as he considered that one couldn't make art unwillingly or unknowingly. Art was always a conscious product. If we look at Botero's The Tortures of Abu Ghraib, we quickly find this aboutness and embodiment. The aboutness is the torture and inhuman conditions under which prisoners were kept, while the embodiment remains clear in the very graphic and deeply unsettling depictions of violence. This doesn't mean the work of art is sadistic or sick. It's just that it's trying to talk about a real issue. If we take a look at Chris Burden's performance, we'll also find this aboutness and embodiment. In this case, it is about the way violence has become commonplace. It's become normalized, and we have lost our sensibility towards it. The embodiment of this meaning is actually pretty adequate as well, as Chris Burden is shot on tape, and now the people actually react scandalously. This call for attention is exactly what Chris Burden was trying to do, and the way he made the artwork actually contributes to the meaning. Again, aboutness and embodiment. So, even if violence is definitely not beautiful, there's still a place for it in the arts, as it can be used to further enhance the artistic discourse of many works, particularly those concerning violent topics. So, at the end of the day, we realize that art doesn't have to be beautiful. There's plenty of examples of outstanding works of art that are actually pretty ugly in many different ways, whether they are unsettling, violent, or just plain ugly. These paintings actually still hold a lot of artistic intrinsic value through their aesthetic experience, their aboutness, their embodiment, their content, and their context. If we stop looking for beauty in the arts, we'll probably broaden our horizons and explore different aesthetic experience we hadn't even considered before. So I believe it's worth a shot. Just give a chance to these ugly paintings and see if you like them.